Telephone number 610-850-0990. There is a new organization launched here in Pennsylvania, and it had an interesting name attached to it, which is why it caught our attention. The former Secretary of the Navy, who happens to be a landowner here in Pennsylvania. Mr. Secretary, it's an honor to have you on the show today, sir. Good morning.
Good morning. Pleasure to be with you.
We were reading about this project called the Land and Liberty Coalition, and I have to say that it was new to me as it crossed my desk, but someone of your tenure with the Reagan Administration and your time in the Navy, now a landowner here in Pennsylvania, I thought it interesting and wanted to hear a little more about it and what you're up to these days. So thank you for joining us today.
Well, it's a pleasure. And the organization has been very effective in raising the understanding of the kind of threats we're under internationally in the energy field. We're just winding down the longest war in our history in Afghanistan, and it's a little hard to say that we're going to win it. We have been fighting war after war, conflict after conflict in the Persian Gulf area because of our dependence on oil. And now, finally, we're thanks to alternate sources of energy and of course fracking here in Pennsylvania and elsewhere. We now are right on the edge of being independent of Persian Gulf. We no longer need to go to war to preserve the sources of oil in the Gulf.
Yes.
And that is why this organization is out to educate people to understand that sources like solar, particularly in Pennsylvania with its farmland and its industry, is an important part of maintaining our security going forward. We have to maintain energy independence. Now we have a new set of threats to our energy vulnerability, in that we now know that the Chinese and the Russians have developed and are improving the capability to shut down our electric grids if we ever get into a conflict with them. They have that capability today. Well, part of the answer of thwarting that and deterring Russia and China from taking really hostile actions against us is to have a more robust energy infrastructure, and that is based, has to be including solar arrays and jointly owned solar arrays. And Pennsylvania is particularly an appropriate place for this, because farmers should have the right to put solar arrays and join together and put them in appropriate places where they won't offend anybody. And I put a solar array in my farm here in Bucks County, and you can't even see it because it's so easily blended in and put a few trees and nobody can see it. But
Dr. Lehman, I wanted to ask you a little more about that specifically. Dr. John Lehman with us, former Secretary of the Navy. You're a landowner in Bucks County, which is interesting. I didn't know that we had someone of your stature here in the area, so that's neat to know.
Well,
but
I grew up in Glenside in Montgomery County, so I'm I'm a long-time resident.
And so it's because you're a landowner, this is interesting too, as you talk about things like solar panels, and I see that as you drive the countryside, wherever you drive, and I see these things, in various farm fields and whatnot. I know that, whether we talk about wind turbines or solar panels, I've never really understood the financial involvement there. Is that something that has to be cleared county by county? Is that something companies arrange directly with the landowner? Is that a state regulation thing? How does that work currently?
Well, that's a key question, because in fact, all of the above in some places, each of these authorities is in some areas encouraging and other areas interfering with landowners' rights to help our national security by bringing in these solar arrays. It's in the township that I'm in, Upper Makefield. They passed an ordinance that makes it virtually impossible to put another solar array into the township because of one or two people who don't like seeing them, and they're so easily landscaped so that they're not offensive. To me, they're not offensive at all because they're just different. I mean, they're beautiful in their symmetry, and they're not offensive. But some people I can understand, they don't want to see these arrays appear in fields. Well, what we need is the kind of legislation that more enlightened Republican states have enacted, which enables farmers, particularly, but suburban developments and so forth, to join together and put in solar arrays that can help them when there's a power outage.
Dr. Lehman, can you speak to, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm just curious, can you speak to the power that supplies? Is that to your property, or what for instance, what's on your farm? Is that...
I have... Yeah, that's a good question. I have a solar array that basically produces enough electricity for all the activities on the farm.
Okay.
We grow a variety of crops and animals, and it was sized so that it could do that, but it doesn't feed right into our electricity. It goes to the power company, and it goes directly into the grid. We are separately charged for the electricity we use, but we get a credit against that by the electricity from the solar arrays that we provide to the power company.
Do you know if that's the same, and again, I'm sorry to interrupt, do you know if that's the same way that works? For instance, I see some homes that put solar panels on their roof. Does it work the same way? Is that the same concept?
It can, but more and more people are putting in these advanced lithium-ion storage batteries that, as the cost comes down, and it's just it's continuing to come down very rapidly, but we have one of the best energy storage companies in technology here in Pennsylvania, and in Reading, and Enersys. And they've made huge advances in technology. And so some farmers are choosing to have storage and use it directly. Others are feeding it into the grid for the credit to be set against their bills.
Yeah, I mean, to me,
go either way.
I feel like I see this as no different than, a backup generator in many ways. A lot of people will pay to have installed a backup generator if they lose power. I see it as a very similar thing, really. I mean, I have friends that have installed solar panels on their roofs, for instance. I haven't, and I don't know anything about it, but I mean, if it powers your home, it certainly makes sense to me. And I guess if it ends up being lucrative, and you can turn your land into a money making venture too. Yeah, I guess so. The conflict comes then, though, aesthetically. Some people don't like the aesthetic look of it. Is that the issue?
Pure and simple. That is all it comes down to. Plus, as we know, our adversaries, China, Iran, North Korea, Russia, are very active in disinformation, and so they do not like to see this emerging robust energy independence growing as it is in the country. So you're seeing articles that really are false information and so forth. So there's anybody who's concerned about national security and about lowering their own energy costs, when they look at the facts and look at what it takes to invest in this, there's really no argument against it. There are people, in some neighborhoods that just don't want to see it, and I can understand that. That's why I put in put in the kind of foliage that you can't see them from anywhere.
He's the he's the former Secretary of the United States Navy under Ronald Reagan from 81 to 87. Dr. John Lehman and Dr. Lehman, if I may, by the way, before we move off of this, I want to mention one more time that you're spearheading the Pennsylvania chapter of what's called the Land and Liberty Coalition, right? So if people want more information on this, is there a way to reach out?
Yes, there is, and we just go online, and there is a website, and I would urge everybody to do that.
Again, that's the Pennsylvania chapter of the Land and Liberty Coalition. And while I have you, if I may I talk business with you for a moment or two?
Sure. I
have to ask your assessment as the former Secretary of the Navy. As you kind of look and assess our military readiness at this hour, and sort of you mentioned, I know Joe Biden just yesterday made the announcement we're withdrawing from Afghanistan. What is your, if you were to kind of assess the totality of the threat globally, hostile regimes, wherever they may be found globally, how do you assess things, and how do you assess our standing to stave it off or keep it at bay at this hour, militaristically, or maybe through the Navy's eyes, if that's your forte?
Well, I was also on the 9/11 Commission, so the terrorist threat is still real, and we have to be able to destroy people like ISIS where we find them. But the major long-term threat is China. Russia is just as hostile, but Russia now has an economy that's about 1/15 of the U.S. economy, so we have to keep that in perspective. They're not as great a threat as China. And China wants to displace us in the Pacific and elsewhere. We do not. When Ronald Reagan won the Cold War, we had built a 600-ship Navy with 15 aircraft carrier groups. And today we're down to 300, a bit under 300.
Wow.
And that means we're not deterring China. China feels it can do a lot of things hostile to us because they can get away with it.
I hear about this a lot at sea, Mr. Secretary. I hear often that they are very, very aggressive in the South China Sea. Their Navy, the Chinese Navy, is extraordinarily aggressive. Is that so? And if we had a more robust Navy and you were still in charge, would you like to see our Navy be more offensively posturing to keep that at bay, so to speak?
Well, that's a good question, because the purpose of defense is not to be able to go to war. It's to deter war, which is nobody ever wins a war between superpowers. And so we've got to be strong enough to make it clear that the Chinese can gain nothing by taking action like they're doing now in the South China Sea. They just suddenly declared that this whole vast ocean of the South China Sea is their territorial waters, their lake, if you will, and since it is one of the most vital sea lanes for worldwide commerce, that's just unacceptable. And so we can't let them do that. But the answer is not for us to go to war with their navy in the South China Sea, or to invade anywhere in China. The point is they are very vulnerable, much more vulnerable even than the Soviets were back in the Cold War, because their whole economy depends on international commerce. Mm-hmm. That's why they built this Belt and Road system to try to be able to trade directly with Europe without using the sea lanes. But they're still very vulnerable, and our strategy should be to make it clear to them we have the strategy to choke the key straits, like the Straits of Malacca and the Sunda Straits, and to mine their harbors if necessary, and to shut down their commerce, which would basically, even for a few days, be crippling to China. So we have geography on our side. And we have to take advantage of it, not just by rebuilding the Navy, but also the Air Force and Coast Guard, which is becoming more and more involved over there. So, and we can do this without breaking the bank, because all we have to do is do what Reagan did and bring competition and fixed price contracts and serious disciplined procurement. Right now, we deal with monopolies, and there's virtually no competition in the defense budget. So they have beauty contests, they call competition, but then they award 50-year monopolies to the big defense companies. So it can be done. It's easy, relatively easy to do, and without breaking the bank.
Dr. Lehman, I must confess, I'm sorry that I did not know that we had a man of your stature in our backyard, but I hope perhaps we can reach out to you again for discussions like these in the future. But in the meantime, I really appreciate your time today. And again, thanks for your time talking not only about issues of the day, but the Land and Liberty Coalition here in Pennsylvania, too. You're welcome back anytime, sir.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And thanks for your service to the country, sir. That's the former Secretary of the U.S. Navy under Ronald Reagan, Dr. John Lehman, a Bucks County resident. I don't know if you knew that. I didn't know that. Look, anytime you got somebody of that caliber here in our backyard, I was like, yeah, we got to talk to that guy. That's great to hear from him. Telephone number 610-850-0990, 610-850-0990. We're online at 990theanswer.com.
From executive producer and MyPillow founder Mike Lindell comes the hilarious new faith-based comedy, Church People.